In the previous section, we covered some of the fundamentals of React and ES6 classes. And finally, we built a very trivial shows app to give you a brief idea about how we can make user interfaces for web in React. It's fine even if you have a little bit of hesitation about any concept that you feel is not clear to you. We are going to revisit some of the concepts again in detail here in this section and put them into practice by creating our first decent size application in React. The name of our application will be Cat vs Dog. It's a cuteness fight game between cat and dog. This app or game is quite simple. Cat and dog are our players here. Both the images of cat and dog will be displayed here simultaneously. And all you need to do is hit like or dislike for any image. Clicking on like button increases the player score by 1. And clicking on dislike button decreases the player score by 1. And simultaneously both the player images are refreshed. So if I click on like button of dog's image, it will set dog score to 1. And every time you click on like or dislike button, scores of players are updated. A new image will be fetched for both the players. Then if I dislike dog's image, it will set score to 0 again. And new images are loaded. 1 like and 1 dislike for dog so far. Now I'm gonna hit like for cat, which will set cat score to 1. So dog score is 0 now and cat score is 1. Let's hit like for dog's image 2 more times. It will set the score of dog to be 2 and cat score to be 1. And the winner is decided based on the final accumulated score they got over a set of images. The one with the more score is the winner and the other becomes the loser. In case of equal scores, the game is a tie. Finally, we can choose to declare the winner by clicking on Show Winner button, which will display the scores of each player along with the winner and the loser. Now our like and dislike button functionality is disabled because the game is finished. You have to restart the game again by clicking on Start Over, and that will enable these buttons again. After the game is restarted, both the players will have their scores reset to 0 and images are reloaded again. So if I click Show Winner button, then the game will be a tie since both the players have equal scores of 0 now. You can restart the game at any point in between the game by clicking on Start Over. So if I like cat's image, and that should increment its score to 1, and then I hit the Start Over button, it will set the score of cat again to 0. And to see the scores, let's click on Show Winner button. And we can see that score of cat is 0 because Start Over resets the scores. This is the final structure of our app. We will build it step by step by appending features one on another incrementally before finally giving it a touch of optimization and best practices at the end. In the process, we'll learn quite a few new concepts and terminologies in React while parallelly putting them to use in our application, along with the concepts that we have already dealt with. Before we start any coding, let me ask you a quick question. I want you to pause the video for a second and break down this app into several different components that can make this whole app. I'm gonna go ahead and explain how I'm going to separate them into components. Firstly, header itself can be one component. Then cat text, cat's image and cat's like and dislike button can form under one component. Similarly, dog text, dog's image, dog's like and dislike button can belong to one component. And Start Over and Show Winner buttons can form a component. In React, since everything is a component, this entire application UI itself is a component, which we are going to call it as a homepage component. Again, this is just one of the several ways you can break down your app into components. You might have come up with some other possible idea and that's totally fine. The key design choice that you will be making here is that the more refined, the more granular and self-contained you make your components, the more flexible it will be for them to adjust and reuse at later point of time. Not just in the same application, but across multiple applications. Also, I want to make a point here. What we did above is just an initial classification of components that we can come out at first glance. It may or may not remain same in the finished version. As we move further in our app, we polish the components, refactor them, make them as reusable ones to eliminate duplication of code, and do some optimizations also to run the app efficiently and also maintain readability. So our component structure might change. In fact, it will change. When we finish developing our whole app, we again make it a point to discuss what all components we started with, introduced in middle, and what we have finally. Also, I'm assuring you, as we move further in this course, you'll find it easier to break down app into refined, granular, and self-contained components. We'll even discuss some of the guidelines, and I will also point out some of the material that will help you in breaking down the app into reusable and independent components. Okay, now to mention briefly what we are going to do in this session. Firstly, we'll kickstart our application project using Create React App library. Then we go on to write our first component and render it on the web page. Then we organize our components in separate files. and we will parallelly revisit the concepts in brief wherever we find them necessary. Okay, let's begin setting up our application project using Create React App. So I'm going to navigate to my terminal, and since we already have Create React App installed, let's use it to create a brand new React project from scratch. I'm going to type the command create react app, and I'm going to give my project directory's name as cat_doc, and let's hit enter. Again, for starters, Create React App is a library which makes it hassle-free to initiate our React App projects. It establishes all the necessary build configurations for us so that we can directly start working on the actual content of application's look and functionality rather than spending quite a bit of time setting up the React environment to build and run it. And as usual, it takes some time depending on the speed of your internet connection, since it has to download and install several packages. I will pause for a moment and join again when it's done. Okay, now that our project has been successfully created, let's start the build server process for it. I'm going to navigate into a new tab inside my terminal, and I'm going to enter into my project's directory by typing cd cat_doc. And I'm going to execute the command npm start, which will start the build server process for it. It may take just a bit of time to build our project and run it since it's the first time. Okay, we can see our application is up and running. Now I'm going to open up the project inside my code editor by navigating into projects directory and executing the command atom dot, which will open up my project inside atom editor. And inside the project, I'm going to select all these files inside src folder, which Create React App stashed onto me by default, and I'm going to delete them. Okay, and let's create a new file by name index.js. Okay, before we start writing any React code, we need to import React library. So I will write var react equal to require React in quotes. This statement precisely means, hey buddy, go to the node modules folder, look out for the package by name React, and import or give me the reference to whatever the package React is exporting, and store it inside my local variable React here. Okay, the core thing React does is, it knows how to work with components, knows how to create and manage them, and how to form views from the nested components that will be finally going to get displayed on the DOM. And just forming the views is of no use unless we display them on the browser. So here comes React DOM that spit out the views created with React onto the actual DOM. So let's import React DOM as well. I'm going to write var React DOM equal to require, again React DOM in quotes. Now that we have imported React and React DOM, it's time for us to create a component which actually returns something to display on the UI. For starters, components are the basic building blocks of React. They return React element that represents what contents should appear on the UI. Components can nest multiple components inside them in different fashions to achieve the desired application's look and feel. One quick tip, it's always good to start with a functional stateless component. Then as the need comes, we can transform it into a stateful component if we need to maintain some state inside our component. So I'm going to define the homepage component. Do you remember how we defined it earlier? All we need to do is just to write a function that returns some JSX. That's all. Let's define it. I'm going to create a functional stateless component by name homepage like this. It's a function and it should return some JSX. As a part of its return statement, let's head over to the browser once. If we observe in our finished application, it's rendering some heading which says welcome to cat and dog cuteness fight game. Let's do the same in our application also. So I'm going to create a h1 React element with content or inner text to be welcome to cat and dog cuteness fight game like this. Okay, again we need to keep the name of our component with first letter as capital to distinguish homepage from React's built-in elements like h1, div, etc. Okay, as I defined a component, my next step would be to render it onto the screen. For that, I'm going to use render method of React DOM. So I will write React DOM dot render. It takes in two arguments, what to render as first argument and where to render on the DOM as second argument. The first parameter should be a React element of type homepage, and that is what we want to show up on the screen. To create a React element from homepage component, we can simply write it in JSX like this. This is a self-closing JSX tag. It's a concise notation of, let's put it in comments, homepage written in opening and closing tags. If we don't have any content going between the opening and closing tags, the React component can be shortly written as like this in JSX. Okay, both of these will eventually get converted to React.createElement with homepage component as first argument. So all the three ways here will create a React element of type homepage component, and we will confine to the simplest one, which is using JSX self-closing tag. So I'm going to remove this comment. Okay, and as its second argument, it takes reference to the target DOM container where this homepage component is going to be mounted on, which we can get by simply using document.getElement by id root. Okay, let's save it and head over to our browser to check the output. We can see our h1 tag got successfully rendered onto the web page. Cool, but nothing that we couldn't do earlier, right? Our homepage component would be the root component, and all the further components that we are going to create would become direct or indirect children of it. Remember, we discussed that we have root component or app component that composes smaller components and so on. All our individual components reside in a top level app component. Similarly, the top level app component in our case is homepage component. It's the one which eventually would be rendered by React DOM, while all other components are nested inside it. Okay, and generally I would like to keep all my components in a separate folder inside src directory. This is not compulsory but quite a common practice in React community. So I'm going to create a new folder by name components inside my src directory like this. And that will be the source point of all my component files. Okay, and as a general rule of thumb, we keep only a single component in a .js file for the sense of modularity and code organization. So let's create a new file by name homepage.js inside my components folder. Okay, and it will contain our homepage component. That way, all of my components are modular and hence reusable across same or multiple projects, and also clearly organized rather than clustered in a single file. Okay, now let's use the magic of cut paste to move homepage component code from index.js to homepage.js. So I'm gonna cut it from here and I'm gonna paste it over here. Okay, and also you might notice that I have given the name of homepage.js file with its first letter as capital. This is again a common practice to keep your component JavaScript files gets distinguished from normal JavaScript files. Okay, and we know that all the JSX calls are transpiled or converted into React.createElement method calls, which will eventually toss out views. So through this line of code, we are accessing React library's createElement method in our file, but we haven't imported it. So as a rule of thumb, we have to make sure that React library is included in all the files where we are writing any JSX code. So let's quickly import React. So right over at the top, I'm gonna write var react equal to require react in quotes. Okay, otherwise it's gonna throw the error React is not defined when we execute on the web page without using React library or without including React library. Okay, and right now our homepage component is isolated from index.js. So there has to be some means for them to share the functionality and to make use of the behavior provided by one module in another, so as to combine them to finally produce a bigger application. The corresponding file's chosen contents has to be exported to make it available and use it in other files. So the way we do that with CommonJS syntax would be, I would write module.exports equal to homepage. Okay, let's remove this extra line over here and save it. Fine. Finally, we need to import homepage component in our index.js file before we can use it here, just like we imported React and React DOM. Since it's our custom file, importing it is a bit different from how we import our libraries. We have to provide the relative path of the file which we want to import from the current file where we are importing. Let me write it first, then I will explain. So I'm going to write var homepage equal to require and in quotes ./components/homepage. What I really mean here is, from the current directory where my current file or index.js in this case resides, go to components folder and get me the reference to the exported contents in the file by name homepage and assign it to my variable homepage here. That's it. We don't need to include the file extension if it's a .js file. Build tool or webpack that we are using with create react app in our case would automatically look for the file by name homepage with .js extension if no extension is provided. And notice that we didn't have to tell relative path when we imported React and React DOM libraries, because build tool automatically looks in node modules directory for npm packages. For user-defined or custom files, we need to tell relative path because build tool doesn't have any idea about which file you are talking about. If you don't provide the path for custom files that you have written, build tool is going to search it in node modules directory, which is not the place where we keep our own files. Okay, let's save it now and verify it once on the browser to check if everything is working fine. And sure enough, we can get to see our homepage component is successfully getting rendered onto the web page. Okay. Before we wrap up this lecture, let's revise what we have covered in this. We first had a brief revisit on components. Then we created our first homepage component. And we saw different ways of creating React element from a component. Then looked at render method of React DOM and its arguments. As a general rule of thumb, we wanted to keep one component per .js file to increase the code modularity and reusability. And then we finally migrated homepage component to an individual JavaScript file, homepage.js. Okay, and now what we are seeing on the UI is a plain and dull text. In the next section, let's see one of the ways how we can add styling to our components in React. Alright, let's continue.